My name is Candy Hilton. I'm the house manager at Grace House. Today we're going to be discussing part 2 of our Vigil volunteer training, which will be discussing communication and presence and what that means as a Vigil volunteer, creating a sacred space for a person that is going through the dying process and their family, and what it means to respond to common situations and what you do in those moments when you're dealing with residents and families as they're going through the dying phase. And also keeping an emotional tack on yourself as a Vigil volunteer, how you give yourself self-care and make sure that you're taking care of you when you're helping someone else and supporting that resident and family member. So these things are what we're going to discuss, and I hope that you tune in. Ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Candy Hilton. This is the Vigil Volunteer Training Part 2. Just some topics of discussion. We're going to do a real quick review of what we discussed the last session. We'll get into cultural and religious considerations, communication and presence, creating a sacred space, and responding to common situations like what to do if something were to come up, depending on the situation. And then the emotional journey and self-care that you would need to have to take care of yourself as you go through this process of being there and being that presence for the resident and or their family members. And then we'll have a closing reflection. Just a real quick review of session 1. We discussed why we sit vigil, our presence, and how that communicates to the resident and the family members that they are not alone during that time. Understanding that vigil is not about doing, it's about being. And you sitting with the dying is an act of dignity, compassion, and love, and how every life and every death matters. There was this quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was instrumental in the hospice movement. Death is an integral part of life, as natural and predictable as being born. We discussed understanding the dying process and how death is a natural part of life. There's the physical, emotional, and spiritual changes that we know are going to occur and be there, not just with the resident, but also with their family, if family is present. Actively dying phase that includes decreased responsiveness and understanding that every death is unique. There's unique relationships. Every relationship, just because your dad died and this person is their family member is their dad, it's not going to look the same. It's not going to be the same because your relationship was your relationship with your dad and theirs is theirs with their dad. So, and the way that death occurs for each person is very unique because we're all unique individuals. What is a Vigil volunteer? We reviewed this. So someone that provides a calm, compassionate presence at the end of life, ensuring that no resident dies alone. That could mean you just sitting quietly with that person, listening. Sometimes it's not a matter of feeling like you have to say something, just that presence and you being there is speaking volumes to that resident and or family member. Reading, holding a hand, those types of things says more than any words could really say to a person. And then supporting the families through your presence and just reassurance that they're not by themselves as they go through this process. What Vigil volunteers do and do not do. So what you can do as a Vigil volunteer, you can offer your presence and silence, listening with full attention, and supporting residents and families emotionally. What we don't do as Vigil volunteers is provide medical care or advice, counsel or explain clinical decisions, or impose any of our personal beliefs or prayers. And that's something that we have to really keep in mind, because there are some people that come here that don't have any religious beliefs. There are some people who do, but they may have such an anger towards their person of higher power that they may not want to discuss that. And really, we have those types of disciplines involved here at Grace House. We have the Spiritual Advisory Board. Each of the hospices that the residents are on service with, they have chaplains, they have social workers. We have people that we can reach out to and say, hey, can you come and intervene? And it's just a matter of you letting us know, if it's not me or Holly, the caregivers, letting someone know that this is what has been said by the resident and or family, and you think maybe it would be good to get someone else involved that could really speak to those things that they're going through. So we also discuss why boundaries matter. Boundaries in any relationship, I think, is important, and it can be very difficult at times to set those boundaries and remain consistent, and not say, oh, well, it's okay this time. It really is something that, you have to work at staying consistent with. But it matters for the Vigil volunteer because it protects the residents, their families, and you as the volunteers. It prevents burnout and emotional overwhelm, because when those lines get blurred, then it can pull on you and drain on you a lot more than it would if you were able to set, those healthy boundaries. And it helps us to maintain a professionalism and that trust level, and it helps us stay grounded in our role. I think there has to be a healthy boundary where you're not crossing over by doing personal things for volunteers. Like we specifically have volunteers that will take residents to appointments or things like that. But if you're coming as a friend, that's something different. Like we have some volunteers that aren't really volunteering, but they're friends of a resident, so we can't speak on that. But you as a volunteer, we wouldn't really ask you to be coming to pick up somebody unless you're in that role of transporting them somewhere, and just kind of not blurring those lines and giving gifts and things that could kind of mix and blur the lines up a little bit. But I think in this instance with Vigil volunteers, just making sure that you know the role that you're in and that you're staying in that role, and not doing what I would say like are extra favors for one resident that you wouldn't really necessarily do for another. I think it just in healthcare alone, like there's some things that you just like ethically, like it just wouldn't be, it shouldn't be tolerated, even though it is a different environment here because this is a home and we want them to feel more of a home environment and less of a clinical, like hospital facility type environment. But there are still things that we don't want to do that, I remember a resident trying to give me some money for my birthday a few a few months ago, and I'm like, no, I can't take this. I would not feel comfortable doing that because of how I was brought up and how I was trained as a nurse. But even still, like, this is their home and I know that, but I did not take that money. I gave that money back. Yeah. So it's just having those boundaries and knowing, I think the best thing is just knowing what the call of action for you to be in that role of being a Vigil volunteer. Yeah.
Can I bring in flowers for them?
I don't think flowers is an issue.
I mean, it's okay.
I don't think that would be a problem. And the other thing you can do is just check with Demi too and see, is this something that we can get for them? So it's not necessarily coming out of your pocket. Like, yeah. Our treatment should be the same. Like, no one is more important than another. Like, they're all important and they all matter. So then we wanted to just bring up again about the awareness of self, transference when others project feelings onto us, and how we don't want to project our feelings about a particular thing onto any of the residents or family members. Some of our residents, they have different backgrounds than we do, and they've had some really horrible, rough experiences that some of us can't really even relate to, but we can empathize with what they've gone through, but just not allowing how we might feel about a certain thing, like, oh my gosh, I would never do that, or not pushing that or transferring that onto them, because that's their story. Everybody has their own story. And then the counter transference, our emotional reactions. Sometimes I can say, I get this probably honestly from my mom. My face will say something before before my words say anything. So being careful of how we react or respond to a situation, to something that a resident may have said or done, or a family member, and not allowing that to affect what we're doing, because the thought is we have to keep in the forefront of our minds that we're here for support. We're, no matter what has been done in their life, no matter what their family members, no matter if they're being manipulative, whatever the situation, see that person as a person, and that at this point in time they need the support and their family needs the support. Because really, honestly, sometimes the family members are lashing out because they're going through a certain degree of grief even before their loved one dies. So presence and communication, we all know about listening and how that can be more powerful than you actually speaking any words. Silence can actually be very comforting. I think because of the way our society is made, we always feel the need to talk. But as I was saying earlier, silence and just your presence can speak more and speak louder than actually saying things at certain times. A gentle touch, that is another way of someone feeling a person's presence, just lightly touching their hand or their shoulder, just something to let them know that you're there and they're not by themselves. Because I can't imagine, I'm sure it probably for some people is really scary, and them not knowing what's going to happen and the unknown. If we put ourselves in that position, you can kind of empathize and say, yeah, I think I would like someone to just hold my hand or something. Gentle touch and a calm presence matter. Words should never minimize grief. So learning from a case study, we did do a case study at the end of the last session. We explored a scenario where boundaries were crossed. And even in the best of intentions, with good intentions, it can cause harm if those boundaries are crossed. So just having awareness and curiosity, having humility, that all matters and plays into you being in this role of vigil volunteer. Support and supervision are always available, so never feel like you're alone. If there's questions that you have, you can reach out to the caregiver that's on staff, and then, like I said, myself or Holly. Caring for ourselves. Vigil work can be emotionally tender. It can be draining for the volunteer, and we recognize that. I think doing any discipline in this area can drain you emotionally. So it's really good for you to have self-awareness, know how much is too much for you. If you see that maybe I can do and sit with a person maybe once or twice this week, but maybe next week I'm not going to be able to do that much. Like, just take cues from yourself to know what's too much for you. It's self-care is essential. It's not optional. Journaling, debriefing, and rest matter. Now, I know everyone's not a journaler, but I love to journal, and it really helps me to get my thoughts out. And just as this is saying, it's okay to step back when you need to. But again, it's you knowing you, because you know you better than anybody else. And if it's too much for you and you see that I need to take a step back, it's okay. There's other volunteers that are also doing Vigil that can fill in that gap. You don't have to feel like it's only you out there doing it.
How long
So
are your vigil shifts?
I think they usually do 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
But then you can sign up for however long. And we try to start it earlier, so it's not like it's right at the very, very end where, then the person dies. But we try to get you all involved sooner rather than too late. Yeah. So just some things to think about from a cultural and religious perspective. We want to make sure that we're respecting that person and or their family's rituals and beliefs. So we want to try to inquire early about specific prayers, rituals, or sacred items that might be important to them, such as in St. Nicholas Hospice Care, which advises that some cultures prefer specific rituals. We want to make sure that we're considering family dynamics, understanding that some cultures rely on communal or familial decision-making rather than individual autonomy. So I can think of like the Hispanic culture. Usually they look to their matriarch. And then I think the Indian culture, they have where everybody kind of lives together, like multi-generational. So, but I think they still look to the matriarchs to make like decisions. It's not so much the person who's actually going through the experience. So just being sensitive to those things and understanding that those are things that we as caregivers and volunteers should consider. Physical presence and privacy offer quiet presence, which is sometimes the most valued support. Post-death customs. This is something that I experienced when I did palliative care. I worked on the palliative care unit at Akron City. Be aware of traditions regarding the handling of the body, such as the need for immediate, gentle, or specialized care by family members. So I think the Jewish culture, like they usually, it's like a fast thing. They have to, when a person dies, they have to do all of what they do. And so within so many hours. So just respecting that and knowing that this is something that may come up. I'm trying to remember if it was the Muslim religion. I know there was a guy on the APC unit, and we had to turn his bed in the east direction. So because they pray like what 6 times a day or something. So we had to do that. I was working nights at the time, so it didn't impact me as much as like the nurses that work day shift. But it's just keeping those things in mind that these are still rituals and practices that family members a lot of times and patients or residents, they still want to fulfill and implement even though they may be in that state. And that is if family members are involved, because we all know with the population that we serve, a lot of times there's not many family members, if any at all, that are present. So we try our best to get as much information with this type of information that we would need to really be sensitive to a person, but we may not get everything that we would need in this way. Communication styles, be sensitive to cultural differences and communicating pain or the role of silence. I know as in the African American community, there's this thing about being stoic and just like not saying anything. If you're in pain, like that's a sign of you not being strong or something. And it's like, no, no. But that's still something to be sensitive to, that that's possibly a thing that they may not be relaying exactly how much pain or distress they're in, just because they think that's a sign of weakness if they're sharing that they're in pain. Dietary restrictions, be aware of cultural or religious dietary needs and practices during the final days. And then cultural sensitivity and action. Volunteers may be asked to help create a peaceful environment, which might include playing music, reading, or creating space for family rituals. So I think it's just a matter of, if the resident is able to speak for him or herself, or if there's family members there, just asking, like, what kind of music brings you comfort? Because it's not about us. What brings you comfort? Do you want the lights dimmed? You know, we can think that, and we think, oh, that's a peaceful environment, but it may not be for that person or that individual. I know, like, my mom is in the hospital right now, and I know my mama loves gospel music, and she likes old school gospel music. So that's what I play her. But that may not be the same for someone else. So I think in the instance when there is no family involved and we may not have a lot of information, just picking something that might be soothing is probably, like in the form of music, might be the best option. Active listening is also, really important to show that you're fully present. Eliminate distractions, not being and doing things that, brings you a source of comfort, but knowing that you're there to support the resident and family. Maintaining comfortable eye contact and using open body language to show you're engaged. So if they're non-responsive, just making sure there's no distractions, no loud noises or music. For the most part, I think our house is pretty quiet. But if you hear something that's like really disturbing, maybe seeing where's that noise coming from. And then just keeping it a comfortable environment for them, you being fully present. Encouragers with verbal or nonverbal, use small, quiet cues like I see, go on. That's a way of letting a person know that you're engaged, you're interested. Nodding to encourage the person to keep talking without interruption. And this might be a family member that you're using these techniques with. It might not be the resident, but just so that you're showing that you're fully present and not being distracted in other areas by other things. Paraphrasing and reflecting is another way of active listening, restating what you've heard the speaker say, or emotions in your own words. It sounds like you are feeling blank, blank, blank. Withholding advice or judgment, which sometimes when you've experienced or have experiences, it's easy to kind of fall down that rabbit hole to say, well, you should do this and you should do that. But just focus on the speaker's feelings rather than you trying to fix their problems, because 9 times out of 10, people are sharing because they just want to get it out. And they're not necessarily wanting someone to fix it. They just want to be able to emote and let those feelings come out. Using open-ended questions. So open-ended allows a person to be able to elaborate and speak on whatever the issue at hand might be, instead of just answering yes or no. It allows deeper expression. How are you dealing with that? That means, they're going to be able to elaborate and really get into the gist of what they're feeling and how they're dealing with it, and asking, tell me more about that. The 3 R's. Receive, so you want to listen attentively, so you're receiving that information in. Reflecting allows you to mirror their emotions. whatever they're feeling, and responding, giving an empathetic feedback. So again, we have to take I out of the equation, and really it should be the you, like that person, you. Key takeaways for active listening. It provides a therapeutic space. It allows people are less afraid of their feelings when they can be when their feelings can be discussed openly, and it also validates how they feel, to make them know that how they feel is not a bad thing. It's just how they feel. Even if you might not agree with it, just the fact that they're vulnerable enough to share that information and get it out in the open could be a huge help to them. These are some ways that you can be silent but still active. So silence activities creates a comforting, non-anxious presence through silence. Some examples that I have, and maybe you can chime in. Sitting in a chair at the bedside without speaking, the soft, low volume music, a comfort pause, 5 minute silence. It provides peace and intentionality in that pause. So sacred space. This is a peaceful, intimate environment that honors the final stage of life. It shifts the room from a clinical to more of a comfort feel. Now, I think Holly and whoever else designed Grace House, like, I think they've done a really excellent job of making this home feel like a home. When I first came here, before I got this position as house manager, I initially came in as a volunteer. I came to the volunteer orientation, and I kid you not, when I walked in the door and I sat down, there was just this peace. And I think that there's just the spirit of peace here, no matter what's going on, how chaotic it can be some days. There's just a spirit of peace that is here. And I think that takes away that clinical feel and really allows this to feel more like a home. So in that person's room, it's not so much about the clinical at that point, but just allowing it to be a comfortable, home-like atmosphere for the person. The organic nature of space, you'll probably enjoy this, Jane, since you like those nature walks. It's suggested to bring in natural elements when possible. So like Michelle, you were saying flowers. I think
Plants, can you bring a plant?
plants, flowers, wood, soft natural fabrics, things that bring more of those earth tones to the environment. Use natural light gently, so open in the shades. We have the dark shade, the black one, and then the other one. So just lifting that one up enough that it's not too distressing to the person, but just allowing that natural light to come in. If possible, orient the bed toward a window or nature view. I think one of the advantages of our rooms, everybody has a great view of our garden and patio area, so the courtyard. So that's a huge plus. These elements help the space feel grounded, alive, and calm, which I think is part of the reason why they picked the colors that they picked for our home. Engaging the senses. So comfort can come through the senses, not necessarily words all the time. So sight, soft, warm lighting. All of the rooms have the dimmers, so it can be really bright or dimmed down. Again, you can control it with the shades, how much natural light comes through. Lamps or battery operated candles instead of overhead lights. So we don't allow candles in the rooms, but those little LED, that flickers, I've seen some family members bring that in for residents. They'll have the lights dimmed down, and then they'll have those little battery operated candles. Sound, we talked about music, gentle music, nature sounds, quiet. It reduces the harsh noise of whatever's going on out here in the common area. Touch, it can come through soft blankets, pillows, textures that they may be familiar with, comfortable chair for long vigils. So we all have, the rooms have the recliner chairs. If there's not a family member there, like you can, feel free to sit there. But anything that would be, comfortable for that person. We have lots of blankets here, those really, really soft ones. So that's important. Smells, we can't really do too much of the like candle smells or I call it scentsy, but like the candle warmers or what have you, in the rooms. But if it's something like lotions that they really like, there's so many scented lotions, it might be really pleasing. I know lavender is like a really nice, comforting smell for most people. Always defer to the resident and family for preferences. And colors, soft blues, greens, and warm neutrals feel less clinical. So with privacy, intimacy, and dignity, declutter when possible. Remove unnecessary items or distractions. So there may be some things in some people's rooms that can be very cluttering, and just maybe assisting the caregiver to declutter a little bit. It may be some dishes that need to be removed, and just kind of clearing that space so it's more open space and not so cluttered. Create clear but gentle boundaries for privacy. Yeah, we have no control over what other residents tell each other, but but if it's us in the position of not sharing information about a resident with another resident. But if they choose to tell their own business, that's their own business. Put it that way. Lower lighting in the evening to encourage rest. So we have those dimmers in the rooms, surrounding the resident with familiar and meaningful items. So most of them bring in things that are familiar to them when they first come in, or family members bring it in as they're here, but hopefully not to the extent where it's cluttering up the space too much. Photos are great, books, symbols, any favorite objects. So rituals, I think when you have them and respecting that somebody else's might be different than yours, and I think as a vigil volunteer, if there's ways that you can help that person achieve the goal of what their ritual may be, is fabulous. So it's a symbolic act performed with intention. It marks a moment, holds space for emotion, make meaning out of something that might otherwise feel unbearable. So this is something that can help ground a person as they go through the process of dying, and what that means for the resident and the family members. They can be simple or elaborate. And you can support these rituals, but you don't have to lead them. You can just be the one to help guide, or, like they said, support a person as they can achieve it. When someone is dying, there's so much we can't control. Rituals give us something to do with our hands, our hearts, and our grief. So what do they offer? It offers connection. This connection is between the dying person and their loved ones, between the present and the past, to your point, Michelle, between the living and the mystery of what comes next. It's meaning. They help us tell a story about what this life has meant to the person, who this person is, and what they want carried forward, like what their legacy, and the presence that it offers. Rituals ask us to slow down, which is a great thing, because in the world that we live in, it's just constant, fast pace. Slow down to witness, to honor the moment rather than push past it, and really just soak it in. We don't do enough of that, I don't think. Because everything is, I got to go here, I got to do this, I got to, so just really basking in the moment. So examples of this: a music goodbye. A woman in hospice had been a choir director for decades. Her family organized a living room sing-along with her favorite hymns and pop songs, harmonizing around her bed. Her eyes lit up. She mouthed the words. That ritual became a kind of spiritual balm for everyone present. So anything that you maybe not personally, like for yourself, but has there been any experience that you've had that may be in line with this example of a ritual?
We had a dear friend dying, and the grandkids and all the family would call into his home at the same time and say this prayer that he loved.
Aw,
And it just became a ritual.
I love that.
It was beautiful.
I love that. That's really cool. I love that. Another example: one man who loved books asked each of his children to write him a chapter about their relationship, what they learned from him, what they wanted to say. They compiled it into a simple bound book, read it to him, and placed it in his hands when he died. It was sacred, personal, and completely theirs. I love that. So you, and being the Vigil volunteer, caring for you, we talked about clear boundaries and scope. So as a Vigil volunteer, your role is to be calm, quiet, and present, a quiet presence. There's no clinical task, but respect that, you still need your own self-care. Take breaks. If you're here for those 2 hours and you need a break for a few moments, let the caregiver know that you're stepping away for a couple minutes. If you need to get something to drink, just something that can get you back in that space where you need to be. It's okay. We know there's emotional limits, and we don't want you to have any burnout, because this is work that can burn you out quickly. That's why I was saying earlier, if you see that doing 1 or 2 shifts is your limit, that's okay. That's okay. When to step back. It's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to step out. It's okay to ask for help. Self-care is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. So it's not you being selfish. It's you actually taking care of you, which enough of us don't do all the time. Additional things that you should probably consider: always ask or observe before changing the space. So if you're in a residence room and you maybe see that to make it more comfortable, just ask before you do it, because if there's family members there, they may not want it touched, and that's okay. But just asking them, is it okay if we make this a little more comfortable? And I was thinking we could do this or move this here. Just check with them. What feels calming to one person may feel intrusive to another. They may want it kept just like that because that might bring them comfort. Families may not want changes. That choice should be honored if they don't. Some equipment must remain. Sacred space can coexist with medical care, so it's not all or nothing. Like, I think it cohabits together, because we still need to be able to get to like the oxygen concentrator. That still needs to be there. If they're on oxygen, we still need to allow and make allowance for the caregivers being able to come in and do direct care and give medications, but still, even in that, creating as much of a sacred space for them as providing that extra level of comfort. The goal is softening, not removing necessary care. So it's just softening and making it more appealing. So these are resources, and you have that in your handout here, since this is a copy of the slideshow. But these different books here and the authors just to give you, some further information regarding what we've discussed today. Any other questions or comments?
So I wanted to ask about, like, do people usually like on medication in the last days? Is it just pain medication, or is it like something that can make them sleepy? Or
So it usually is medications for pain or shortness of breath, which usually it serves for both. Like the pain medicine can serve to help the pain and the shortness of breath. It may be medications to help with agitation to kind of help them stay calm. Those are the biggest ones. And unfortunately, the side effect of those medications can be drowsiness and cause them to sleep. But the reality is when they're to that point, their body is shutting down. So they're going to be sleeping and pretty much unresponsive. So it's not really the medicine. The medicine is helping to keep the symptoms at bay so they're not in distress. So just in closing, is there anyone that would like to share one takeaway from the information that we've discussed today that you can take away as you go on this journey of being a Vigil volunteer? What's one thing that will help you in that role?
I consciously get in touch with my own mortality when I'm sitting. listening.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes. I think that's so important too. That's a really good point, because when you get in touch with that, I think it gives you a level of compassion and grace and a level of empathy that you might not take the time to really give to other people. Because when you're looking at your own mortality, you kind of it puts a whole different spin and perspective. Like, the time that we have is so precious, and when you get to this point, you just think about, what would I want if I was laying in this bed? What would I want someone to do? And not see that person as a person, no matter what they've done. Like I said, our population, they've got some backgrounds that is like, it's amazing. But they are so much more than the things that they've done, the things that they said, the relationships that they've damaged, so much more. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, most people on our earth cannot sit vigil for whatever reason they have. But for me, I just feel like it's such an honor to do it. I mean, it is an honor to watch, be able to just sit and be there while somebody transitions to a different side, and that helps me focus. If my mind, because sometimes 2 hours is a long time, especially when they're sleeping. But to remember that it really is an honor, and I think of all of the things that are internally happening to their bodies. That's what helps me focus.
Absolutely.
And not lose focus, is to just think of the honor that it really is.
That's good. That's really good. That's really good. When I worked home hospice, years ago, there was a really amazing nurse that I worked with, and he used to always say that being able to have that honor to be with someone when they die is like having the honor to be with someone when they're born. And that put a whole different perspective for me, because we all want to see a baby be born or be there when the baby is born, but to see somebody take their last breath is one of the most amazing and beautiful moments. So thank you for what you do. Remember, self-care, journal, or do whatever works for you.
thanks, Candy.
Thank you.